Alright, everybody, peace. Welcome to the Started Body Basketball Show. Wherever or however you're listening, we're so grateful to have you with us. As you guys know, I'm your host, Sean Cottle. And we're going to be covering today some of the biggest news so far going on in free agency. The first of those being Klay Thompson recently signing a 3-year, $50 million contract with the Dallas Mavericks. And the other being Paul George signing a 4-year, $212 million contract with the Philadelphia 76ers. And I want to start with Klay Thompson signing with the Dallas Mavericks. And oftentimes, guys, we associate a relationship ending with one or both parties having a negative outlook or negative personality. So we automatically associate negativity with a relationship ending. And we automatically assume if one party decides to break up with the other, that person, that party is disingenuous, they're dishonest, they are disloyal, and they are quote unquote not a good person. But that's an inaccurate assumption, an inaccurate judgment on both parties when it comes to relationship ending. We have to understand that everything in this physical realm has an expiration date. Everything eventually comes to an end in this physical world. Same thing is true about relationships. Just because relationships end does not mean that either party were necessarily dishonest or disloyal or any negative adjective you would like to use to describe the person. Things just end. Things can run its course because everything has an expiration date. And just because something has run its course does not mean that it ended badly. It often can just mean that it just ended. It just ended because it was meant to. And that's how I view this Klay Thompson departure from Golden State. We can't allow the sadness. We can't, quote unquote, sadness. We can't allow the possible negative animosity, angst that's associated with Klay's departure. We can't allow those emotions to overtake and, quite frankly, cloud out all the positive things that Klay did in Golden State. Quite frankly speaking, all the positive things that Klay and Golden State has done in tandem will always cloud out the possible sadness that might be felt right now. So what Klay has done for Golden State is insurmountable. It can't be quantified. Klay Thompson is hands down the second best shooter in NBA history behind Steph Curry. He's going to go down as one of the 50 greatest players of all time. And him and Steph solidified themselves as the best backcourt of all time. And what Klay has done in Golden State is something that very few players are able to do in their career. What is something that very few superstar generational talents are able to do in their career. And Klay was able to accomplish that in Golden State. And similar to Kevin Durant leaving Golden State, things just end. Things just end. And the best option is for things to end sometimes. Similar to Kevin Durant and Golden State, he just hurt towards Achilles. He had the quarrel, the issues with Draymond Green, and Golden State was not particular about extending Kevin Durant long term, and Kevin Durant was ready to leave. He was ready for a change of scenery, and so things ended. Similarly with Golden State and Klay Thompson. There was just a difference of opinions. Golden State was not willing to give Klay a 2-year, $40 million contract, and Klay felt that he was starting to get back to somewhat of his prime, or felt like he had a couple more years left of his prime. We got to remember that this year, Klay was second in the league in catch and shoot threes, which in my mind points him as still one of the best shooters in the league with that stat alone. And there was just a difference of perspective within the two parties. And it's strictly a business decision at this point. But this should remind players, should remind people that there's no true loyalty in business. And the NBA is a business. It's entertainment primarily, but it's a business and in most aspects as well. And it doesn't matter how loyal you are or how loyal you quote unquote want to be to a franchise. Once the franchise or organization realizes or believes that you're no longer an asset to them, they will get rid of you. And as an individual, you always have to be willing to make the decision that's best for you and your future. And that's what Klay did. And it's just business. And it doesn't matter how much you accomplish with the organization, with the franchise. There's going to be a time when you guys need to part ways, whether that is in the form of retirement or you going to another franchise, to another team. It's not always it's very rarely is it personal. And in some aspects, neither party did anything disingenuous to each other, like in this instance right here with Klay Thompson and the Golden State. They just had difference of opinions, and it was best for them to part ways. There was no other option where you could see these two parties moving forward together. And that's all it is. Do I believe that Dallas was the best option for Klay? We can have another discussion about that on a later episode of our show. I thought that Orlando would have been a good fit for Klay Thompson. I know they went and signed KCP. I thought that New York would have been a good option. I doubt, but they didn't have the cap space to sign Klay. And based on the options that were available, yes, Dallas was a good option for Klay Thompson. Now, does this make Dallas the prohibited favorites coming out the West? I'm going to need a couple more weeks to decide on that. But does this make Dallas better than what they were last year? Or this past season? Absolutely, no question about it. And if you're Golden State, was this the best choice to let Klay go? Absolutely. Now allows you to fully trend towards rebuilding. Now, I know Steph Curry is still on the roster, Draymond Green is still on the roster. I doubt those two players want to be part of a rebuild, so I won't be surprised if either after next season or the season after that, Steph Curry is going to be looking to explore his options, along with Draymond Green. I know they just signed an extension. But it allows Golden State to trend towards rebuilding if they're not able to sign a key piece this offseason. So if Golden State is not able to sign an all-star caliber wing this offseason, I do believe they're going to start trending towards a rebuild and possibly shipping other options for Steph Curry and Draymond. But things just have to end sometimes. And that's how life is. It's not anything negative. It's an understanding that everything in this physical world has an expiration date, relationships included. But you can't allow the ending of a relationship to mar or cause you to have a negative outlook on what the relationship was. Relationships can be wholesome and positive, but they just end. Because that's how this physical realm works. Things just come to an end. They have to. But we should still be appreciative for what occurred and what you were able to learn and transpire and what transpired from the relationship, because everything is a learning experience. Same thing with the Klay Thompson departure from Golden State. lots of positive things were accomplished between the two parties. And when you're able to reflect on it 15, 20 years from now, you're going to say that was a great moment together. Same thing should be applied to our lives as well. But with that being said, guys, in our next segment, we are going to be recapping the other breaking news in free agency so far, with Paul George going to, or signing, my apologies, with the Philadelphia 76ers. So guys, be sure to stick around for all of that. You're not going to miss it. Right back. Alright, everybody, welcome back. In case you missed the first segment of our show, we were discussing the breaking news coming out of Golden State with Klay Thompson signing with the Dallas Mavericks for a 3-year, $70 million contract. And in this segment, guys, we're going to be discussing another breaking news coming out of free agency with Paul George signing a 4-year, $212 million contract with the Philadelphia 76ers. As you guys know, Paul George has spent the last 5 seasons with the Los Angeles Clippers, making 1 conference finals and 2 first-round exits, a 1-3-1 blown lead. And Paul George has recently signed, like I said, a 4-year, $212 million contract with the Philadelphia 76ers, which now pairs him with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. The question automatically now becomes, does this make Philadelphia better? Yes, it does on paper. But now the question becomes, was Paul George worth the max contract? Was he worth the $212 million over the course of 4 years, with Paul George being 34 years old? Some people question whether he's still in his prime or if he's on the downside of his prime, the other side of that hill. I believe that because of the way the NBA is played today and the way that Paul George's style of play is, it allows Paul George to extend his career by about 4 or 5 years. But also, Paul George is someone who's skilled enough where he doesn't necessarily have to rely on his athleticism to still be productive and to still be efficient. Paul George is a skilled enough player where he can get to his spots proficiently. He's a good enough shooter off the catch where he's still a threat and a value to an offense without being on the ball. The question becomes, will he be a liability defensively? Something that we all know Paul George is. He's had stints in his career where he's been a defensive standout, but there are other points in his career where he takes lapses defensively, and the physicality on the defensive end is something that could be in question. However, something that Philadelphia was missing was a third scoring option outside of Maxey and Embiid, especially on the wing. The lack of productivity coming from Tobias Harris has been an issue for Philadelphia the past couple of years, and they quell that with the addition of Paul George. Does this make Philadelphia better than Milwaukee? I believe so. Does it make it better than New York? That remains to be seen. I'm not ready to commit to that yet. And does it make him better than Boston? No, not exactly. So I do believe that this makes Philadelphia, at worst, the 3rd best team in the Eastern Conference, based on how things are currently constructed within the Eastern Conference. And what this does allow, though, it allows Philadelphia a legitimate chance in a playoff series against a possible Boston Celtics or against a possible New York Knicks, because of that extra scoring option that Paul George brings. This also could possibly allow for Philadelphia to sit Joel Embiid more games in the regular season, because with the combination of Tyrese Maxey and Paul George, that allows Philadelphia to still be competitive and to still win in X amount of games without Joel Embiid. Something that Philadelphia struggled with this past season was staying afloat and staying in contention in the playoff race, with the departure of Joel Embiid due to his injury. This allows Philadelphia the space now and the opportunity to rest Joel Embiid, because they now know they have an extra all-star level threat to pair with Tyrese Maxey, and allows them to still be competitive. What this does for the Clippers moving forward remains to be seen, however. I know that James Harden just signed a 2-year, $70 million contract with the Clippers. We got to remember, though, listen, James Harden has gotten a lot of flack with his recent contracts, but listen, James Harden was just third in the league in assists this past season. The Clippers also re-signed Russell Westbrook, but this tells me that Kawhi is going to, I believe that Kawhi is going to retire a Clipper. I don't see him leaving, especially with the departure of Paul George. And we'll get into the Clippers on another episode. I don't want to get too deep into it, but sometimes the best thing for a team is addition by subtraction. I believe the Clippers fit that mold. It allows Kawhi more space to attack, more opportunities with the ball in his hand. Same for James Harden, and same for Terrence Mann. I believe that Terrence Mann is going to be a possible all-star level threat, or turn into a potential all-star, because he's going to have more touches, more opportunity to play. And similar to James Harden's departure from Philadelphia allowed Tyrese Maxey to turn into an all-star level player, I believe that same thing is going to occur for Terrence Mann in the departure of Paul George. It's going to allow Terrence Mann to have more opportunities with the ball in his hand, more playing time, and allow him to turn into the all-star caliber player that he is. And I believe the Clippers aren't done shopping players. I believe they're going to look for another player to sign in free agency. Possibly DeMar DeRozan. I'm not sure what the cap situation is looking like for the Clippers, but that could be a potential landing spot. We all know that DeMar is looking to come back to LA, whether it be with the Lakers or possibly with the Clippers. That remains to be seen. But I do believe that Paul George made the right decision in signing with the Philadelphia 76ers. It was either this or the New York Knicks. But once New York went and signed or traded for Mikal Bridges and gave the max contract to OG Anunoby, that pretty much was the writing on the wall that Paul George is going to be going to the Philadelphia 76ers. And everything has foreshadowing. We got to remember that there was one halftime show during the NBA Finals where they had Paul George and Joel Embiid on the panel at the same time with Malika Andrews and Bob Myers and Michael Wilbon and Stephen A. Smith, and Joel Embiid alluded to Paul George joining him in Philadelphia. And listen, these players, they communicate with each other, they talk to each other throughout the season, and absolutely during the off season, and this stuff is coordinated at times, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just where we're at in the NBA today. So that when I saw Joel Embiid allude to Paul George potentially joining him in Philadelphia during that halftime coverage of the NBA Finals, that told me all I needed to know about where Paul George was going to be going this upcoming season. And this does make Philadelphia better. And it also allows Paul George more touches. So we could possibly see an uptick in Paul George's usage rate and his numbers compared to last season. But once again, this is another instance where things just come to an end. There was nowhere that this partnership between Paul George and the Clippers had pretty much hit its ceiling, and it was time for a breath of fresh air for both parties. Clearly, the Paul George Kawhi Leonard experiment didn't work in LA, but not because of the players, more so or I guess you could say it's the players because their inability to close out the 3-1 series against Denver, and also health as well. The best ability is availability, and that's not always the player's fault. So things have ran its course with Paul George and Clippers, and it was time for a change of scenery. And Paul George being back in the Eastern Conference once again allows himself the opportunity to make a deep playoff run, possibly with the Philadelphia 76ers. But let me know what you guys think in the chat room. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section about Paul George signing with the Philadelphia 76ers. And let me know what you guys think has been the greatest or the biggest signing so far in free agency. Would love to hear all about it, guys. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button as well. And if you like exclusive content from the Started By Show, be sure to follow us on Patreon as well. You can just by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in Sorry to Bother You Show. That way you can stay up to date on all of our latest content that we post daily. And if you'd like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/sorrytobotheryoushow/tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/sorrytobotheryoushow/tip. With that being said, guys, that's it for our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again on Friday, same time at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. With that being said, guys, continue to stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions. Until next time, peace.